Many people look at the current state of American politics and assume we are heading toward a dark, uncharted territory. I would argue we have already been there. We simply forgot what it looked like. Panic usually stems from the idea that our situation is a unique, modern invention. We imagine these specific fractures in society are happening for the first time. Looking at the history of how human beings choose their leaders reveals a cycle of predictable, recurring loops. Power is gained, held, and lost following a traceable rhythm. The Book of Ecclesiastes contains the line, "There is nothing new under the sun." When applied to politics, this serves as a diagnostic tool. Recognizing these historical repetitions turns the past into a roadmap. If we can identify where we are in the cycle, we can see where the road is likely to lead. In the early 1930s, German society reached a breaking point. The foundation of their civic life had essentially dissolved. The Great Depression left millions of Germans without a livelihood or a sense of purpose. Men stood on street corners wearing signs listing their qualifications, desperate for any task that would allow them to provide for their families. This economic misery was compounded by the memory of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles imposed staggering financial reparations and stripped the nation of its territory, leaving a population that felt discarded by the international order. These conditions produced a specific collective psychology. People who feel discarded by their government and their economy will eventually search for any movement that offers them a sense of meaning. By the time the political establishment realized the depth of the crisis, trust in legacy institutions had already vanished. The old order had no answers for the suffering of ordinary citizens. Authoritarian movements rely on this specific environment. It requires a population so weary of instability and so hungry for dignity that they become willing to consider extreme alternatives. A magnetic leader eventually fills that void. He speaks the language of the working class and mirrors the rage they feel toward a system that failed them. This process begins by granting absolution. The leader tells the people their pain is not their fault. He then identifies a scapegoat, blaming a specific group for the national decline. Finally, he dismantles competing moral authorities, ensuring the movement becomes the only source of truth. This figure creates an immediate sharp divide. One side of the country sees a dangerous demagogue, while the other sees the only person strong enough to restore their place in the world. When a population believes their survival is at stake, and a leader offers them both a savior and a villain, the trade-off becomes simple. They often find that surrendering their political agency is a small price to pay for the promise of security. We can now apply this lens to the present day. This is an exercise in identifying structural parallels, moving beyond the specific names and faces of modern politicians. Our current environment shows familiar signs of distress. We see widespread economic anxiety and a documented decline in trust toward our most basic institutions. Many Americans feel abandoned by a system that seems increasingly disconnected from their daily struggles. This feeling of being ignored creates a volatile political energy. In response, modern figures have emerged who use the same tactical playbook. They weaponize collective pain by targeting scapegoats, whether they be immigrants, elites, or rival political parties, to build their movements. When historians point out these similarities, they are performing a specific type of pattern recognition. They are observing the same sequence of events that has preceded societal collapses in the past. The mechanics of how a society falls apart remain the same regardless of our technology. The same psychological triggers are being pulled today. We study history to build a defense against recurring catastrophes. It provides the context needed to recognize a crisis before it becomes irreversible. Factions and languages change over the decades, but the desire for power and the methods to manipulate a hurting population remain static. Every movement of this kind offers the same illusion, the promise that political victory and the defeat of an enemy can provide a true sense of belonging. Our responsibility is to look past the partisan noise. The question we face is whether we are willing to learn from the cycles before us. History is an exam currently in progress. The patterns are visible. The warnings have been issued, and the consequences of ignoring them are well documented.